All right, happy Thursday, everybody. It looks like black people are still not behaving in the way that the Democratic Party would like us to. I mean, look, they brought out Usher, Lil Jon, Eminem, Barack Obama. Barack Obama was rapping, and still it looks like people are not voting for Kamala or not excited about Kamala. So they're now bringing out the big guns in the form of Beyonce. Yes, they've just announced that she'll be making an appearance on behalf of Kamala in Houston. But first, I want to talk about the Menendez brothers because I am just seeing the same system of propaganda over and over again that has become so effective in the past. You get a Netflix special, a Peacock special, and suddenly people are feeling emotional. And I'm just wondering if that's starting to obscure us, just starting to obscure our moral clarity. Don't worry, guys. We're going to cover Kamala still. We're still looking into Kamala. We're still investigating Kamala. And I still have an update for you, plus some explosive interview that I have booked for next week. I'll tell you all about it. That's what we have coming up on Candace. You know, lots of people on Instagram were asking me to weigh in on the Menendez brothers. Everyone's kind of obsessed with this case and what's happening and sort of saying like, oh, have you looked into this? This is more. It's tied to the Diddy case. Yeah, now I've looked into it. And I can tell you just like from the very beginning, for me, when I see that the district attorney of LA County, George Gascon is weighing in on something and saying that somebody should be released. And I see also that Kim Kardashian is getting behind something because she's got quite the track record with looking for cases where people are very clearly guilty and then trying to present to the public that they should feel bad for these people for certain reasons. Instinctively, I just knew maybe not to immediately get on board because I know that propaganda and celebrities are one hell of a drug. So today what I want to do is talk about something very important. And by the way, guys, it's all related. Like the reason why I'm discussing this is because if you have been watching this series, you can see that I am really fascinated with the power of propaganda. I became particularly interested when I learned more about Sigmund Freud, something that got me into a ton of trouble this year. It continues to get me into trouble. I have been called every single name imaginable because I was shocked when I read this book that I've told you about several times. Please put it on your list. It is called The Assault on Truth, and it revealed to me that a person who was in control of the Freud archives, the director of the Freud archives, who eventually lost his job for just trying to ring the alarm and tell the public, hey, Sigmund Freud, that guy we've been celebrating in the textbooks, and this guy was a Harvard graduate who he adored Sigmund Freud and believed in psychoanalysis and believed in psychology. Yeah, then he realized that Sigmund Freud had created the psychoanalytic movement to cover for pedophiles, which kind of adds up because everything he did was basically to develop these theories on children and sex. Like if you really look at his life work, he has somewhat of an obsession with children and sex, also known as gaslighting children who were coming to him and telling him that they were molested by their parents, accusing them of having been attracted to their parents. No, you weren't molested by your parents. You were just attracted to them. And then as I learned more about Sigmund Freud, I realized his relation to the Frankist cult. And that's what got me in trouble with the media. It doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel like maybe this cult is still in power. But yes, there was a movement, a rather fringe but very powerful movement of Frankists who believed in incest and pedophilia as a sacrament of their religion. It's a straight up cult. You can look into it. Not only should you look into it, you must look into this. It is very important to learn this because powerful people were a part of this cult. Powerful families were a part of this cult. And when I began speaking about this, like I said, I was getting hit everywhere, but it was very funny. I want to show you this tweet. The Israel Advocacy group or whatever they are were trying to do this whole thread about my anti-Semitism because how dare you touch one of the untouchables, which is Sigmund Freud. And this is a real tweet from them as they're debunking everything I've said, the Israel Advocacy movement. She also claims Freud was a part of a secret Frankist cabal and that psychoanalysis was based on Jewish mysticism. Both of these claims are false. Well, not entirely. Surprisingly, my research found that several members of Freud's inner circle were descendants of Frankists. While there's no direct connection to Freud himself, he was close to these Frankist descendants. This is one aspect of her theory which, incredibly, is true. Oh yeah, all my homies are down with pedophilia as a sacrament, but no, not Sigmund Freud. He's just interested in the theory of children and sex. Now, why am I telling you that? Because, well, he's considered the father of modern psychology, and his family kept that power. Then came the father of modern propaganda, who was Edward Bernays, another person who you should learn about. Very terrifying, the way that he realized that you could modify human behavior through the power of the mainstream media. Like, the media could be used as this tool to change the way people dress. He did this to change the way people eat, to change the way people act. Can you use propaganda to make women wear skirts? Can you use propaganda to make Americans eat eggs and bacon? He literally did this. He is credited with changing the kind of breakfast that we ate in America. And the answer was yes. Well, most people don't know this. So many times you get people that watch a Netflix documentary and they're like, you must watch this Netflix documentary. You must watch this. And I'm going, guys, it's the same family, though. Who created Netflix? Who is the founder of Netflix? Do you know the answer to that? Okay, so Edward Bernays was the father of modern propaganda, and that was Sigmund Freud's nephew. And guess who his nephew was? Mark Randolph. Yes, Mark Randolph is the co-founder of Netflix, and his great-granduncle is Sigmund Freud, and his great-uncle is Edward Bernays. That is very important for you to know. Learning these facts completely transformed my relationship with the media, completely transformed the way that I view these documentaries, and then I kind of went back and examined cases. Like, I was 100% in growing up on the Michael Jackson is a pedophile. And then I realized, well, why did I think that? Well, did you watch this Netflix documentary? And did you watch this documentary, Leaving Neverland, and all of this stuff? And then when I actually looked into the details of the case, I was shocked and alarmed. And I now, he was obviously deemed innocent in the end, but it was very clear that this was a man who was fighting very powerful executives. And then they used their propagandist media to try to turn the entire world against him. And ultimately, I believe, which led to his death. There's no question in my mind that Michael Jackson was innocent and was a victim of the media. And so when I see these cases happening and I see the way that it doesn't matter who it is, I mean, you could take Casey Anthony. I think even recently, Jeffrey Dahmer. People were starting to feel bad for Jeffrey Dahmer, and they were like, Candace, like, have you seen the Netflix docs about his childhood? And I'm going, how many times are we going to keep doing this? And it's not just real life stories, even in cartoons and movies for children, you're seeing that we are starting to feel bad for the villains, right? Like, it's like, don't you want to hear the story of Malevolent? This is the real story of Snow White and why you should feel bad for her. What is Wicked? Oh, we're bringing back the villain. Actually, the Green Witch, like, you wait until you hear her backstory, and then you're going to see that actually she's the true victim of the story. And Glenda the Good Witch, yeah, don't trust her. We are being psychologically conditioned. And I just want to point that out. We are being psychologically conditioned by people that I believe who are evil to accept evil if they can create a narrative that we believe in. If they can get someone to come out and speak and say something, which in the case of the Michael Jackson case, they were able to find people that had debts and people who were looking for a come up, and you just don't know what back channels they're looking for, to just participate in the documentary. And then when their stories fell apart later, nobody cared because they had watched the documentary. And that is a part of this psychological conditioning, that you believe that when you watch something, it must be real if you feel emotions. We have to be careful. So for those of you that are not familiar, because I know I have a lot of people that watch this show all over the world with the Menendez brothers case, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it right now. So the Menendez brothers are Joseph Lyle Menendez, who just goes as Lyle Menendez, and Eric Menendez. And they are children of an RCA music executive. His name was Jose Menendez, and his wife, Kitty Menendez. She was a retired teacher. They obviously fell into a lot of money. Essentially, he at first began as a Hertz executive. They were growing up in New Jersey, and then he became an RCA Records music executive, and they moved out to Calabasas, a wealthy area. So in 1987, Lyle attended Princeton University, where he ended up being placed on academic probation for poor grades, and he was eventually suspended for plagiarism. There were other issues with him in his dormitory, where he threw out all of his roommates' belongings because he said he didn't want to share a room. He left sinks overflowing, causing damage, and he repainted his room in violation of university rules. So he was just kind of a problem child that happened to be at Princeton. And eventually they said, you know what, you got to get out of here. Back in Calabasas, his brother Eric wrote an amateur screenplay with his classmate that was called Friends. And it was the story of a rich young man who killed his parents in a perfect murder because he wanted the inheritance money. So he wrote this story, okay? Now let's get to what happened on August 18th, 1989. Eric and his brother purchased 2 shotguns. And then 2 days later, on August 20th at 10:30 p.m., they barged into their parents' Beverly Hills mansion. Now, to be clear, the reason that they barged into their mansion in Beverly Hills and not in Calabasas is because they had to move, because the year prior, the brothers went on a burglary spree in the Calabasas neighborhood and stole like $100,000 from their neighbors, which included jewelry. And so the dad had to up and move them to Beverly Hills. Okay, so you got problems in Princeton, you got problems in the Calabasas neighborhood with the law. And then once they lived in the Beverly Hills mansion, they had purchased these 2 shotguns. And at 10:30 p.m., they barged into the mansion and they blasted their parents with those shotguns as they were eating in the den watching television. Jose, the father, was shot 6 times, including a fatal shot to the back of his head. Kitty, the mother, was shot 10 times in total. Before she received that fatal shot to her face, she was on the ground crawling away. She may have survived, but then Lyle ran to the car where Eric then handed him more ammunition to reload before firing that fatal shot to her cheek. They later told a therapist that they killed the father because they hated him and that they killed the mother out of mercy. Like they said, it was just a mercy killing. And of course, they had run out of shells and then went back to the car before they had hit her again. Now, some things that are just important to know. Again, these are the facts. I know people are all fired up because, like I said, once Peacock and Netflix creates a series, people are suddenly too emotional to listen. But these are the facts of the case, that these kids were wealthy kids, that they had obviously a lot of resources. Like I said, the burglaries were not inconsequential. They took a lot of money. And then following the trial, what happened in 1989 I should tell you what happened actually first. Let me back up here and tell you what happened immediately after they shot the parents. They assumed the police were going to hear them. The police did not hear them, so they were able to change their clothes, get rid of their clothes, get rid of the shotguns, find somewhere to bury them, and then they went down and tried to purchase tickets to Batman to create their alibi. They went out that evening, came back, expected the police to be swarming their home. The police were not swarming their home, so they themselves opted to call 911 and to insert an alibi to say that they had been out, came home, found their parents dead. And when they phoned the operator, Eric was screaming in the background with so much grief. It was this totally brutal scene. The police officers and the forensic staff that had worked on that scene described it as one of the most brutal that they had ever encountered, noting the blood and the brain matter that had been splattered all throughout the room. And there was even a detective who stated, quote, "I've seen a lot of homicides, but nothing quite that brutal. The blood, there was flesh, there was skulls. It would be hard to describe it." And they said that the father didn't even resemble a human being that would be recognized. That's how bad it was. But regardless, they obviously, when they arrived at the scene, believed the boys because they were young. And one of the brothers even offered up a possibility that the reason this murder had taken place was because of something dealing with the mafia. His father is involved with a record executive, like maybe that's what's going on. And so the police didn't even scan them for residue. They truly just believed that these boys had stumbled home to find their executive father and their mother dead. And they had believed this show of grief that they had put on. What happens next is really important because if you know anything about the story and the trial and what's happening on Netflix, it's now turned into a story about sexual assault. But these facts of what happened on that day and thereafter are actually really important. It took 7 months for the police to investigate and to turn their investigation onto the brothers. And I want to let you know that during those 7 months, Lyle purchased 2 restaurants, a cafe, plus a buffalo wing restaurant. He also purchased 3 Rolex watches and a Porsche. Both of them traveled on vacation to London, the Caribbean. They also attended a Knicks game courtside. Eric hired a full-time tennis coach. And then the police started going, okay, that's interesting. Like, this is quite a way for 2 people to behave in any circumstance of their parents just being brutally murdered, sort of spending all of this money. Could this potentially be a motive? Then what happened was Eric's high school friend, Craig, reported to the police that Eric had confessed the murder to him. And he also revealed that Eric had previously written that 66-page screenplay, like I told you earlier, entitled Friends, which depicted the son killing his wealthy parents for their inheritance. So the police are thinking, maybe we have a motive here. Then Lyle's friend, Glenn Stevens, informed the police that just 1 week after the killings, Lyle actually made a sudden trip back home to Princeton to destroy something in the family computer. Stevens said that Lyle told him that a family member had located a new will and he had gone back there to erase that will. Then a computer expert came forward and confirmed that he was hired by Lyle to ensure that the new will had been properly deleted off of the computer. So these are the facts of the case that you're not hearing people discuss as they talk about the sexual abuse that the boys said they endured during the trial. And by the way, I'm not here to question that narrative. The parents are not alive. You already know where I stand on the entire industry. I think it was basically founded by freaks and pedophiles in Hollywood. So I have no argument against them alleging that the father had sexually abused them. But that is what happened. So initially, they had not said that to investigators. But then during the trial, once 7 months later, after they had spent $700,000 and then police arrested them and they got a lawyer, suddenly they said that actually this is a story about abuse and that they had been tortured and that they had been abused by their parents. Eric alleged that Jose had told him that he was written out of the will. I think that's also important. So we know that leading up to it, the father had told Eric that he was written out of the will. Lyle's former fiance, Jamie, testified during the trial that he tried to bribe her. He offered her money to falsely testify that the father had made sexual advances towards her. So you can see that during this trial, there are 2 things going on. Like, obviously, the prosecution's going, listen, we're finding out that they're trying to bribe people to lie. They're trying to delete wills off of the computer, actually successfully deleting new wills off of the computer. They've now confessed that leading up to this, the father told them that they were being written out of the will. Now we have that they then purchased shotguns following that, and the parents are both dead. It begs the question, why did you shoot your mom? Okay. If you are saying that your father sexually abused you, why kill your mother as well? If you're the prosecution, you're going to make the argument that you killed the mother as well because this was always about money. You were a rich kid that got pissed off about not getting your inheritance and you killed both of your kids. If you're the defense, you're going to sit there and you're going to argue, oh, well, actually, that's not the case. I don't really know why they cared about the will thereafter, but these were kids that suffered so much trauma that them killing their parents in this way can be understood. And essentially, that is what happened. So his former girlfriend similarly testified and said that she was being instructed by him behind the scenes on how to testify. It did seem that they did try to corrupt the testimony of both his fiance and a former girlfriend, Lyle. That is, Lyle did that. But then on the other side, you had a cousin of his, Diane Vandermolen, who said that she spent summers living with the Menendez family and testified that yes, she had no doubt that there was sexual abuse because when Lyle was 8 years old and he came to her and she was 17 at the time, she said one night that she was in her room changing the sheets in her bed and Lyle came in and asked if he could sleep in the bed that was next to hers because he was afraid to sleep in his own bed because his father had been touching him. So you have proof. Again, the parents are not alive to dispute that narrative, but you can see why people are up in arms and saying that it is a plausibility that maybe the dad really did abuse him, and that is the reason that they were acting out. Then, because you have these things that then get unearthed years later, and then suddenly there's like a Paramount and everyone's starting to make films about it and documentaries. What ended up happening was a Menudo brother, band brother, like the Menudo, the band. One of the members, Roy Rossello, came forward in 2023 to Peacock. He didn't go to police. He didn't testify at the time. But in 2023, he decided to speak out in a Peacock documentary about the Menendez brothers. And he said that he, too, was raped by the Menendez father and that he endured all of this sexual assault while he was coming up in the music industry. By the way, like I said, do not discount any of that narrative. Just think that this stuff should maybe go through on a trial, and that trial should not be Peacock or on Netflix, okay? I don't believe that this is how people should be responding, where you watch something on TV, you hear somebody tell you something, and you just simply believe it because you're feeling emotional. That's kind of the point that we're at right now. Let's take it to its full end, right? Let's actually say that we believe fully. Let's just take that scenario fully, that the Menendez brothers were molested by their father when they were kids. Like I said, we can just, let's accept that narrative fully and say we can verify it 100%. Do you believe that that would then give them the right to murder their father, okay, then to murder their mother as a mercy killing, as they described it, thereafter, then to go on a shopping spree, hoping that you're maybe going to get away with it, buying, kind of preparing for your new life? Does that not just in your head flag you as, wait, that's not right? For some reason in our head, there's like this either or, and people are like, well, if the guy sexually assaulted them, then no matter what they did is okay. And that is not the circumstance. Two things can be true at the exact same time. If the sexual abuse allegations are true, then truly, truly, I hope that their father is burning in hell. I really do hope their father is burning in hell. But it would also be true that them executing their mother and their father and all the things that they did thereafter, trying to edit the testimony of their girlfriends and their fiancés, is also wrong. And I would not want someone who had exhibited the anger that they exhibited before they killed their parents. I'm talking about what they did at their time, what one of the brothers did at their time at Princeton, exhibiting anger behavior, also burglaries leading up to this. We have a problem here. These are not people that I would want released back into the streets. Maybe you want them to live in your neighborhood, and you can hug them back to health. That's totally fine. But there's a pattern here that had been established leading up to this. And I don't think that shooting your mom, if you did do that, okay, and feeling so okay with it that you just go on shopping sprees and don't have any remorse, like if they had told on themselves and said, we did this because instantly, trying to get away with it in the way that they did makes me really uncomfortable. So I offer this only to constantly keep us thinking about whether or not we are being emotionally manipulated by the media, right? To not reach sensibly, logically sound, morally sound conclusions that cold-blooded murder is wrong. I've seen this happen with George Floyd case. I've seen this happen when, suddenly people don't care about the things that George Floyd did in his past. It all becomes down to what they watched. It all comes down to a documentary and the facts and what somebody said they saw versus what actually happened that day. It just seems to be happening more quickly these days. The faster person, like the more quickly that we churn out these documentaries, the more quickly it seems that any person in the entire world can be rehabilitated. And I'm not really comfortable with that conclusion. That's the only thing that I want to say about that. Again, this is not a way to assert that what happened to them, if it happened to them, was right. But I do think that the public response to this has been very wrong. And that's all I'm going to say about that topic. All right, guys, do you want to have a deeper prayer life, but you don't know where to start? Well, I get that, and so does Hallow, which is why I'm excited to tell you about Hallow's new prayer challenge, which is called How to Pray. Hallow's new prayer challenge will take you through short daily lessons over the next 2 weeks with an all-star lineup of spiritual leaders and guests giving you all the essentials of creating a rich prayer life. They'll teach you how to pray through scripture, how to do imaginative prayer, how to incorporate prayers that have been around for centuries, and so much more. You'll get a new guide every day. And some of the guides include Father Mike Schmitz, Jonathan Roumie, who plays Jesus in The Chosen, and Mark Wahlberg, and many others. The only way we can get through these crazy times is by setting first things first, which is getting closer to God and prayer. That is the best way to accomplish that. So download the Hallow app for 3 months free at hallow.com/Candace. Again, that's hallow.com/Candace. All right, guys, now let's get into Kamala on CNN. Man, she really fumbled the ball big. And it makes sense because what Judge Joe Brown, I'm so happy that, by the way, over 1 million of you guys have watched that episode, when he just describes the fact that she's kind of she's got nothing going on. Things have always been handed to her. She's actually not intelligent. She did sleep her way to the top. I mean, there's no question that Willie Brown gave her power in San Francisco. And I don't know why the media is trying to whitewash that as they blackwash her family history. But yes, she held a town hall on CNN on Wednesday in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania. It was hosted by Anderson Cooper. And it just was more of her word jujitsu at all times. So let's take a look at some of these clips. Here is Kamala when asked a very simple question about mistakes that she has made. Take a listen.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life or in your life in the last 4 years, that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes. And they range from, you know, if you've ever parented a child, you know, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
There it is. You know, like parenting a child, she doesn't have any children. She hasn't parented any children. And when she became a stepmommy, those kids were adults. So I don't even know why she said that. If parenting a child, you make mistakes, that was just like a chat GBT answer. And then saying like, it's a mistake not to answer questions when you're not prepared to answer them. I guess she's saying I'm making a mistake right now. And I would agree with her there, but she just cannot answer basic questions. How easy to look back on your life and think of mistakes that you've made and offer one to the public. She can't do that. She's also a little wishy-washy when it comes to discussing the border wall. Take a listen.
Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw was about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
She just can't answer a question. She just wants to fix it. Let's just fix it. Let's just fix it. I want to secure the border. Like but how I'm going to do it, I don't want to answer because I was so anti the wall. But actually what I'm doing now is saying that I'm going to pass legislation which is going to build the wall, which I feel like a couple of years ago I was saying was extremely racist. And so now I just kind of have to pretend that I didn't say that by not saying anything other than let's just fix it. Let's just fix it. And here is Kamala regarding working with Congress. You're going to love this woman's face, by the way.
My question is this. If you could accomplish only one major policy goal that required congressional action, what would it be and why?
Well, there's not just one. I have to be honest with you, Carol.
Just one. Just one.
There's a lot of work that needs to happen, but I think that maybe part of this point how I think about it is we've got to get past this era of politics and partisan politics, slowing down what we need to do in terms of progress in our country. And that means working across the aisle. I've done that before. We did it around whether it be what we were able to accomplish with the bipartisan infrastructure deal or some of the work that we have done in terms of dealing with gun safety. But we've got to work across the aisle. And it is my commitment to work with Democrats, with Republicans, with independents to deal with a number of issues, whether it be what we need to do in terms of housing and creating legislation that creates incentives for that, what we need to do to reinstate the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do, whether it be what we need to do to actually invest in a substantial way in the industries of the future, in American-based manufacturing, in American-based industries where American workers and union workers have those jobs in a way that is good-paying jobs that gives people the dignity they deserve.
Look,
all of those areas I plan on working across the aisle and with Congress, including the issue of immigration, which we've got to fix.
Unable to answer the question. Once again, you just keep seeing this where one policy, she doesn't have one. She's never thought about this because Kamala is an empty vessel and she will do as she is instructed by her handlers. So the question is, who are Kamala Harris's handlers? And so I wanted to tell you guys the reason why we wanted to take a pause on going through her genealogy is that we're just getting very intricate on certain things, and we don't want to say something and get it wrong because we know the media is waiting for that so they can pretend that the entire series has been incorrect. Right now, they know that we are on to them and they're staying mum and they're telling her it's 2 more weeks, don't respond to this. But the more and more that we look into her family history, for me, it looks quite incestuous. And what I mean by that is that on various documents, as we start to pick apart the Browns and the Harrises and the Allens, there doesn't really seem to be a difference. It seems to be that they just keep marrying into each other. And there is no question that on both sides of her family, she descends from very powerful slave owners, very powerful people who were running the sugar plantations. And so we wanted to put together a chart to give you the races that we know, like to say, like, this is her great uncle and he's this race and this is her great grandfather and grandfather, and these are the races, that we can just give you like a very clear depiction of what that is. You know, yesterday we were looking into Iris, the picture of the black woman that we see and that one photo of her on the lap, and we have spent so much time over the last 24 hours really looking into Iris Finnegan, and there are just a lot of strange things that are popping up. You know, Iris, her, like I said, her real last name is Iris Allen. In terms of searching for her, you're looking for an Iris Allen, and there are just a couple of things that flag to us as weird. Yeah, and one of the things that flagged to us as weird is her birth certificate, which I'm showing to you guys right now. So like we said, Aura Iris Allen is her real name. Aura, by the way, is a Hebrew word. So that's an interesting name. We are not able yet to determine what her race is, so we don't want to wrongly speculate, but someone did email us and say, just so you know, Aura is a Hebrew word. I think it means light, if I have that correct. You can let me know in the chat. If not, I'm not up on my Hebrew, but you can see that her mother is listed on this birth certificate as Joanna Moses. And what is also of interest is that it says that Joanna Moses is a servant maid, and that cannot be true because her father, Peter Moses, as we have discovered, owned so much land, was one of the people that owned virtually everything in St. Anne. So there's something not right about this. And what's also not right about it is that you see that blank space for her father next to Joanna Moses. It says, you know, what is the rank or the profession of the father? It says nothing. Well, her father should be John Allen, and yet he has neglected to fill that piece out, despite the fact that he has signed as a witness. In that lower left corner, it says John Allen. John Allen is supposed to be Jonah Moses's husband and supposed to be Jonah Moses's the father of Aura Iris, and yet he has decided not to sign on as the father. Like I said, my inclination based on the documents that I am seeing is that there is some incest. And people that I'm speaking to in Jamaica are basically telling me how easy it was to manipulate things in the records office. And we're starting to look at what looks to me to be a pattern of intentionally sort of fudging the records on certain things, a lot of unanswered questions about that Peter Moses, who would have been the family patriarch, that would have been Joanna Moses's father. I'm just looking for information on him. And like I said, we want to make sure that we pull it together correctly because we are now getting very close to the election, and I don't want any mistake that we make to be fatal. I'm happy with getting a couple of things wrong and pivoting here and there, but we don't want to make a fatal mistake. I can also tell you that we have been able to secure an interview. I'm so excited about this with Yoichi. You remember Yoichi was the editor of the Japan Times who had written that piece, knew Kamala's mother, and spoke in that piece extensively about how she was involved in the MK Ultra program. It was hard to get in touch with him. We were able to have a conversation and to book a date to interview him. So you have that to look forward to on Monday. I can tell you just based off of our conversations, this guy is the real deal. He also spent tons of time in Hong Kong, and he is telling me that Tim Walz is completely lying about his time spent there, and that he likely had very serious involvement with the government because he Yoichi, should have known Tim Walz, should have come across Tim Walz, and he's called around and asked colleagues, and the Tim Walz that is being presented to us, there's something very wrong there, and he believes that the United States military is involved. So that is of interest. Like I said, he seems very intelligent, has his wits about him. And so we are very much looking forward to that conversation, which I think is really important to get out there to the public. He was very cute. He was sort of like, oh, I write all of these articles. Do people see them? I'm like, you could just tell he's old fashioned. And I'm like, no, we need to get you on a podcast and we need to get you speaking to the public and we need to make sure that we get it to go viral. We are also going to get Judge Joe Brown back because I know 2 hours was not enough. And there's so many other topics that he covered with me off record that I want to make sure that we get out there. So we are not going to let go of the Kamala bone. Do not worry. We just wanted to make sure that we don't make any mistakes because any mistakes made at this moment could be critical. All right, guys, let me tell you about the wellness company. Does anybody else remember Event 201 just before the election when Bill Gates, the World Economic Forum, and Johns Hopkins ran a pandemic simulation in October of 2019? Yeah, very shady because months later, COVID hit. Well, here we go again. It's October and we're on the verge of a historic election. After the recent bird flu summit in DC, they held a full-scale pandemic exercise in New York City. Their playbook is always the same: create chaos, bring back lockdowns, and perform medical tyranny. Last time we were caught off guard, but now we have a proven solution to protect ourselves and our family. The wellness company created the medical emergency kit, and every home in America should have at least one of these. They are packed with life-saving meds like ivermectin, amoxicillin, and a Z-Pak. It's all backed by the wellness company's medical board. Picture this: no more frantic searches for a doctor, no more emergency waiting rooms, just a few clicks, and this kit is delivered to your front door. Protect your family by preparing today. Get your kit by heading over to twc.health/Candace, and you can use code Candace to save $30 on your kit. Take control and ensure that you're protected against whatever comes next. Use code Candace at twc.health/Candace. All right, guys, she's coming. She is coming to town. We knew it was going to happen, obviously. We knew it was going to happen because, like I said, this has been so abysmal for Kamala. They're very upset with Black men for not behaving in the way that they should. So they're going to offer Black men Beyonce. They're like, listen, okay, we're bringing her. All hail the queen. All hail the queen. Nobody can resist Beyonce. And you know what's really funny? I can't say who because I do keep a lot of these discussions private that I have with so many artists and entertainers. A lot more of them are conservative than you think. They are just also having a figurative gun to their head. They're not allowed to speak out on their conservatism or they'll lose everything. But one individual was recently telling me that they get what's known as the call. And essentially, if they step out of line, there's like a Black mafia that's been created of sorts. And these people are supposed to call you. And they essentially, when you get the call from them, you better know that you need to get out there and you need to do something. And those individuals range from Tyler Perry to Barack Obama, once upon a time, Diddy was one of these individuals. And, you know, one person who also told me this obviously was Kanye, but that has been recently confirmed to me again. And so when I see like Beyonce and her being trotted out, I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of the Hollywood Black Mafia. People are having their strings pulled and told that they have to make an appearance. And you wonder why that is. Like, I can't believe that with everything going on, that for Beyonce, this is a priority. Like, I don't buy the Beyonce's here to save the world rhetoric. Like, I personally believe that her and Jay-Z, for whatever reason, are basically told when they have to get out and support something. That's why they were one of the earliest supporters. Remember, I just vaguely or vividly rather recall them marching in the street over Trayvon Martin. Like, they co-signed BLM, and it feels like it became a thing overnight. And they have been sort of minted like the king and queen of hip hop. So seeing that she has now agreed to appear at a Friday rally in Houston with Kamala Harris just smells very funny to me. She will be with her mother, Tina Knowles, and the country music icon Willie Nelson, according to people that are familiar with the planning. And so that is supposed to be announced imminently. And as we know, Kamala, who is definitively not Black at all, not even kinda, okay? She's a Jewish, Hindu, Irish woman, for being honest here, and a descendant of slave owners and sugar plantation supervisors. And one of them, who was incredibly abusive, by the way, Hamilton Brown, was known to be very abusive to his slaves, and she is a descendant of that Hamilton Brown. But anyways, we know that in order to convince people that she's Black, she chose to walk out to Beyonce's song Freedom. That has been her theme music throughout all of her rallies, even though I feel certain that Kamala Harris can not name even 2 Beyonce albums. But they are obviously ginning this up to the public, and it's supposed to make Black people do a 180. And I just find this all to be so routinely insulting. Like, to me, it just reeks of racism. Look at this NPR headline, by the way. It's so embarrassing. Beehive meets K-Hive. Like, there is no K-Hive. There is no K-Hive. If there is a K-Hive, I am the K-Hive. Like, I have basically been swarming her genealogy. Like, I am the K-Hive, okay? And I do not plan on letting this go, because I just find this to be so fundamentally racist. Everything that she has done has been so fundamentally racist, and that includes trotting out all of these Black artists from Lil Jon to Usher and now to Beyonce as a way to tell Black people to behave. So I'm completely not with this. We'll see what's to come of it. It'll likely be something that is hilarious, because there is nothing about Kamala that gives off any type of swag. There's nothing about Kamala. She lies about having listened to Tupac while she was smoking in her college dorm. Like, she told that to Charlemagne the God, and it turned out that Tupac was 10 when she was at university. So that story made entirely no sense. It was, again, her just leaning into a stereotype. She is an empty vessel, but we're going to stay on her and continue to report on everything that she does in these final days leading up to the election. All right, guys, before we get into your comments and cut over to Bumble, I will tell you that lately my family and I have been traveling so much, and the one thing that remains constant no matter where I am is the importance of getting good sleep. Sleep is our foundation. It fuels our energy, sharpens our minds, and keeps us ready to tackle the challenges of the day, and that is where Beam Dream comes in. It is not just another supplement, it's a game changer. Formulated with natural ingredients, Beam helps you drift into a peaceful sleep, so you wake up feeling refreshed and ready to seize the day without the grogginess of other sleep medications. All you need to do is mix Beam into hot water or milk, froth, and enjoy before bed. Right now, my listeners will get a special discount on their science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. So make sleep a priority and try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, and you'll get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Candace and use code Candace at checkout. Again, that's shopbeam.com/Candace and use code Candace for up to 40% off. Better sleep has never tasted better. Oh my God, I'm scared to go to the I'm scared to go to the comments. Did I say Bumble? I'm looking at you guys right now. Did you say Bumble? I meant to say Rumble. Okay. You guys know what I meant to say. Maybe I said Bumble because I said I was the K-Hive and I was thinking of bumblebees or something. But I'm scared to read the comments because I know that there are just some Menendez brothers stands out there, and they were, before we even started this episode, people were like, don't even talk about this. Just say only good things about them. You guys just, I don't know. You guys trip after you watch a Netflix special. I'm telling you. You just like, I mean, listen, I was like the lone sane voice during the BLM stuff. Like right away, I was like, has anybody check this man's record? Like, he seems a little bit on the violent side. Not saying it's like a good thing that he died. You know, it's sad. Drug addiction is always sad, but it was just like a little bit too much. All right, guys, we will see you over on Bumble. Oh, Rumble. I don't know why I keep saying Bumble. Let's get ready to rumble.